Hi, it's Rick from For Community, creating community spaces so you can connect with others and also with God. My favorite Christmas was the first Christmas I spent with my wife. I don't remember what our tree looked like. I don't even remember if we had a tree, big or small. I don't know. I don't remember what our presents were. I barely remember where we were living. We got married in November, and about a month later, we were celebrating Christmas, and it was the most memorable, and I'll tell you why. Because I didn't get married till I was 28, and so I spent a couple of Christmases completely alone, and it really sucked. And so when I got engaged to my wife, I'm like, listen, we have got to be married before the next Christmas because I don't want to spend another Christmas alone. I was clueless about love. I was clueless about life. While we were celebrating the light of Christmas, I was completely in the dark about what married life was really all about. But it was a landmark. It was a turning point, and it was the beginning of enlightenment of my life as a married guy and then eventually as a dad as well. What about you? What was your favorite Christmas, and why was it your favorite Christmas? How about you take a moment just to answer that question, either just for yourself or with the small group of people that you're watching with right now? What was your favorite Christmas and why? There's a guy in the Old Testament named Isaiah who wrote part of it, and he shares with us his favorite things about Christmas. What he shares with us, though, was written about 700 years before the very first Christmas. So Isaiah is actually writing prophecy. He's looking ahead to help us understand what Christmas is all about. Now, it's hard to lock Christmas down and say that there's only one perspective that really matters and is the definitive answer and the real meaning of Christmas, because we can look at Jesus coming to the earth and the Christmas story in many different kinds of ways. But Isaiah has a perspective that I think is worth investing some trust in, since his prophecies 700 years roughly before the birth of Jesus, they all came true. Actually, reading some of Isaiah, which is found in the Old Testament, sounds like you're reading one of the Gospels, because it's just that close to actual events as they took place. This video is based on my interpretation of Isaiah chapter 2, verses 2 through 7. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. For those who live in a land of deep darkness, a light will shine. You will enlarge the nation of Israel, and its people will rejoice. They will rejoice before you as a people rejoice at the harvest, and like warriors dividing the plunder. For you will break the yoke of their slavery and lift the heavy burden from their shoulders. You will break the oppressor's rods, just as you did when you destroyed the army of Midian. The boots of the warrior and the uniforms blood-stained by war will all be burned. They will be fuel for the fire, for a child is born to us. A son is given to us. The government will rest on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His government and its peace will never end. He will rule with fairness and justice from the throne of his ancestor David for all eternity. Hey kids, keep your eyes in the background and notice all the Christmassy stuff and themes and characters that are back there just for you, and let us know who you saw in our next Zoom meeting. Also, please remember to watch this week's episode of Connect HQ. Okay, so not all of that is typically used as a Christmas passage, but I think that I'd like us to see the bigger idea of what Isaiah is trying to communicate as he's sharing his perspective on what Christmas is really all about. Isaiah is looking ahead to the event of Christmas, and he's giving us a heads up about how to understand it, an understanding of it. So here's what I have to share with you today, and hopefully what we can talk about next time we gather on Zoom, or if you'd like to leave a comment anywhere you're watching this. This is a legit understanding of Christmas. To figure out what Isaiah is saying, we're going to look at the three building blocks that he's using to grow his perspective of what Christmas is really all about. So let's look at that together. Number one, Christmas is about life suddenly making sense. The text says phrases like people walking in darkness, and it says see a great light. You know, this walking in darkness and seeing a great light, it reminds me of my kids when they turn about 4 years old. I've got 4 kids, and I notice that when they hit that 4th year, they suddenly start understanding what Christmas is really about. They understand the Jesus thing. They understand the present thing because they've been at it for 4 years now, right? They had no idea really what was going on from years one, certainly not year one, or years 1 through 3, but by the time they get to age 4, Christmas starts becoming really, really fun, right? Because they have a few years under the belts. They start to understand that there's this rhythm, this yearly rhythm of life, and we always come back and cycle back to things that we do every year. They start to get the understanding that we have traditions in life, and then it becomes really, really fun. They were walking in darkness in the first 3 years of their life. And then by the 4th year, they suddenly have this enlightenment and they say, oh, I understand now. I get what's going on. Like my kids had this aha moment at around 4 years old, Christmas is an aha moment for everyone in the entire world to enjoy. The people walking in darkness is all of us. Without personal knowledge of God, we are unenlightened about God and also about life, how it works, what it's for, what it's all about, why we're here, and what we're supposed to do. Christmas is the enlightenment. It's the piece about life that we've all been missing that would make all of this stuff make sense. And unfortunately, this isn't about intelligence. This is actually about enlightenment. Jesus, Christmas, the gospel, and thus the meaning of life, it can't be puzzled out with our intellect. We can't know what we can't know. God is unknowable without self-revelation. And thankfully, we have this self-revelation. General revelation and natural theology, things that we can glean about God apart from the Bible, apart from God's personal revelation of himself, apart from the incarnation. They all have value, but they don't replace God's personal walking among us, dying and rising again, and directly communicating with us. The great light that the people in this text are supposed to be seeing is the enlightenment of God and the life that comes with Jesus' birth on Christmas Day, the incarnation of God. God has come to the world to enlighten us as to who he is and what life is really all about. Christmas then isn't about making people smarter. It's about giving people the self-revelation of God. Jesus is the missing piece that makes life make sense. Now let me ask you, are you following this idea? Here's the idea. Your life makes sense when you're enlightened by God's self-revelation. Take a moment to either agree or disagree with the people that you're watching with. In what way does Jesus help you make sense of life? The second thing we need to understand about this text in Isaiah is this. Christmas is about noticing problems. We have phrases like break the yoke, oppressor's rod, boots of a warrior. I have been told that when family comes together during the Christmas season, it can be quite revealing, and it's not all a happy kind of revealing. I've heard some say that their family Christmas gatherings can be like walking through a field of landmines, but thankfully you know where most of the mines are. In all of our attempts to come together, what we actually find is how distant we actually are. Now, thankfully, that's not every family gathering. That's just some general comments I hear from people from time to time. The text mentions oppression and the boots of warriors. This is history, and I'm sorry, most history isn't all that cool, but this is a pretty big deal. In the Old Testament, Israel tried to pull a fast one by God. Have you ever attempted to trick God? Israel attempted to trick God. They went to the main prophet at the time and they told him that they needed to be like the other nations. I mean, since God is making us into a nation, right? Shouldn't we be like all the other nations are, right? They were asking for a king. What they were actually doing is they were rejecting God's direct leadership over their nation, and they wanted to lead themselves by placing a king over them. Now, God saw through the deception even before they tried to pull one over on him, and he knew that they were rejecting him. That's what this text is all about. This is a national rejection of God, transitioning them into a nation like all the other nations, which enabled them to get into these kinds of trouble. They ended up defeated and they ended up exiled. So here's a presenting problem in the text. Israel rejected God. Take away the stress of being a nation like all other nations, right? Take away having a person on the throne. Take away having a physical kingdom. Take away having to defend borders and expand with military or defend with military. This child is a new start in a different direction, something that's not yet known or experienced by them. They can restart by coming in and following God all over again, as they should have done from the beginning, as you and I should have done with our whole lives. Take a pause just for a second. I can't go into all of it. This isn't the full story. It's just part of the picture. We're only getting part of an answer as to what the meaning of Christmas here, specifically directed towards Israel's rejection of God as a nation. The next part of this text provides an answer to that. A child is going to be born to give you a reset in order to become a nation like you really were meant to be originally. Here's the third part that Isaiah is building on in order to share his perspective of the meaning of Christmas. Christmas is about fixing problems. In the text, we have phrases like a child is born. The government will rest on his shoulders. And he's called Wonderful Counselor for all eternity. The fix to Israel's problems is to take its status as a self-governing nation away because they've failed at it. Take away the borders, take away the military, take away the bad leadership decisions. Is there still a nation? Yes, there is. It's back to square one, the kind of nation that God wanted them to be. It's a nation where God is the leader, and in this case, namely, Jesus is the leader, and his kingdom has no borders because he's not interested in fighting for land that he already owns. Also, take away the leadership transitions as well. No crazy election races or drama, no crazy politics or promises, but the perfect leader who will never need replacing because he's a wonderful counselor, God himself, and he brings peace forever. Now, is there a greater meaning to this? Oh, absolutely. In the New Testament, namely in the Gospels where the birth of Jesus is recorded, this takes a much deeper meaning, for sure. But for today, we're just going to keep it simple and keep it here in this text in the Old Testament. I mean, it's just one video and its interpretation of this. If you see it differently, that's okay. Please place a comment and join us in the next Zoom gathering too and share your thoughts then. So what does Christmas mean for Isaiah? It means that, first of all, we're now enlightened. It's not that we weren't intelligent enough. It's just that we couldn't possibly know what we couldn't possibly know. Now that Jesus has come, we can know what we need to know in order for life to make sense. Namely, that's God himself. It also means that we are more aware of our problems. The focus of Christmas, love, giving, and light makes us aware of how much we don't live in love for one another all the time. And we're pretty selfish usually, and there's a lot of darkness in the world. The brightness of the Christmas season and its message sharply contrasts the darkness that we live in the rest of the year and the reality that we don't know what to do about it. And it leads us to that third point. It means that God can be our leader, and he's inviting us to make him our leader. As was the nation of Israel, so is every other nation on earth. We have wars, oppression, exiles, militaries because we have human leaders, councils, committees, volunteers, adherents, underdogs, people who like fighting for the little guy, and everything else. Even the people who have been enlightened, whether at the top of the ladder or the bottom, they don't possess the ability to truly lead in light like Jesus leads in light, in enlightenment of the truth of the reality of God and our relationship with him and our future eternity with him. The answer is one leader, Jesus, forever. And that can be your reality today, and that can be your reality forever. Because of Christmas, God's kingdom can include everyone from every nation across the earth. He has no borders because he owns it all. He came to invite everyone from every nation into his one kingdom, where he's the leader and where the only national debt is the continuing debt to love one another. All right, so how'd I do? Leave a comment about a thought you're taking away from this video, or make a note to come and talk about something in our next Zoom gathering. You don't have to agree with me, and that's okay. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And if you think it's valuable, please share it and give it a thumbs up. So this is what Christmas is about from the lens of Isaiah and my interpretation of it. It's about Jesus saving the world by revealing himself to us and saving us from ourselves. That's it from me to you for now. If you don't have a community that you're currently connecting with, please don't stay disconnected. Please connect with us. And if you want to go back to your original church community following COVID, following lockdown, that's perfectly fine. Just join us. Let us help you stay connected. Let us help you stay encouraged. And we certainly don't want you to be alone. So reach out, and we'd love to invite you to our next Zoom gathering for our community, creating community spaces that you can connect with others and also with God. That's it from me for now. Merry Christmas.